guys, welcome back to Study Room. Here today we are with another chapter, another interesting story, and another thing to unfold. So today's chapter, chapter 4, is about Bepin Choudhury's Lapse of Memory. So Bepin Choudhury is the author's name and his lapse of memory. As we move forward, you will know what the memory is, what these terms means, and about the author. So about the author, although widely known as an excellent Bengali filmmaker, Satyajit Ray, born on 1921 and died on 1992, is also prominent in other forms of art and literature. He was even awarded the Bharat Ratna in 1992. So basically, the author of this story is the Bengali filmmaker Satyajit Ray. You all must have heard about him because, especially the people who belong from Bengal and that side, he was an excellent filmmaker. He has written stories that has inspired many people, and his stories always had this one kind of thrill that, always attracted the people. So during that era of 1921 to 1992, he was one of the prominent writers, and he also had interest in art and literature. So when you go to West Bengal side and everywhere, there's these schools, Satyajit Ray Film School, whose admissions are really tough. Then there are these art forms that you can find of him, so you can always explore. And he's even awarded the Bharat Ratna in 1992. Now the themes that are in this story. In Bepin Choudhury's Lapse of Memory, Bepin Babu. So you see the Kolkata accent here, Bepin Babu and everything. A well-known businessman slowly loses his memory, or so we think. The writer cleverly constructs a lie that is presented as the truth because multiple people support it. So, you must have heard about this rule that what you hear continuous times, you start believing it. This is a psychological effect, okay? So this story is also about the psychological effect, and the protagonist is Bepin Babu, who's a well-known businessman and loses his memory, and the writer, who's Satyajit Ray, basically constructs a lie which is presented as truth because, a lot of people start telling it. I don't know if people watch Drishyam movie. So in that movie also, because Ajay Devgan keeps repeatedly telling something, so those people start believing it. Right? So yeah. The reason Bepin believes that he has lost his memory is the fact that his brother died of a mental illness. The very idea of forgetting someone like Bepin anxious makes him think because it's a symptom of the same illness his brother had. Let me repeat it. The reason Bepin believes he lost his memory is the fact that his brother died of a mental illness. So, Bepin starts believing that he has lost his memory because his brother died of the same mental illness. And the very idea of forgetting something makes him anxious. So, anxious is basically, you start getting irritated. You start thinking again and again because he thinks this is also a symptom. Symptom is a cause of the same illness his brother had. The reference to fiction is present right from the beginning of the story when we see that Bepin loves reading. So fictional stories are basically stories that are created or known. They do not exist in real world. So it's there from the beginning of the story because even Bepin Babu loves reading and he keeps reading these fictional stories. Now, the story has an unclear ending. Even though we understand that Chinni Lal made up of the Ranchi story, it is not clear how he got the support of other actors, so our questions remain unanswered. So, Satyajit Ray, even in his movies, had a very smart thing of just leaving a very open ending. Like, you keep thinking what must have happened, and that's how he makes us think and involve in the story. So, even this story, this character's Chinni Lal Ranchi story, you will know as we read the story, so don't think about it much, but just understand that this is the overall gist or summary of the story that we're going to read today. So before we start reading the story, let me revise the theme and the underlying gist of the story. First of all, it's about how a lie has been transformed into a truth The protagonist is Bepin Babu, who loves reading, and his brother dies of mental illness, because of which he starts thinking that even he's forgetting the memory. So, how the writer cleverly brings this into a fictional story, weaves it all into a parts, takes the support of other characters, and leaves us with an unanswered question is all about the story. So, let's begin reading the story. Every Monday, on his way back from work, Bepin Choudhury would drop in at Kali Charan's in New York Market to buy books. Crime stories, ghost stories, and thrillers. Remember, guys, I told you how Satyajit Ray writes more of these crime and thrill stories. So he's trying to bring his character also in here. So every Monday, when Bepin Choudhury would come back from work, this is how they're trying to tell that how he's fascinated towards reading books. He used to go to this new market to buy books which involves different genres like crime stories, ghost stories, thrillers. He had to buy at least 5 at a time to last him through the week. So that shows his interest, like 5 books a week. He lived alone, was not a good mixer, had few friends, and didn't like spending time in idle chat. So he lived alone. He did not mix with people so much. He had very limited friends, and he didn't like spending time in idle chat. So he didn't like sitting idle and just gossiping around and everything. Today at Kali Charan's, Bepin Babu had the feeling that someone was observing him from close quarters. He turned round and found himself looking at a round-faced, meek-looking man who now broke into a smile. So at Kali Charan market, it was a rare day because Bepin Babu suddenly thought that someone was actually staring or observing at him. This is also a psychological thing that when a person is continuously staring at you, you somehow just turn around and stare back at him. So he just turned around and just saw this very round-faced, meek man. And then suddenly when he saw him, that guy turned into a smile. I don't suppose you recognize me, that man told Bepin Babu. Have we met before? Asked Bepin Babu. So, every general question that, have we met before? You asking me this? The man looked greatly surprised. We met every day for a whole week. I arranged for a car to take you to the Hudru Falls. In 1958 in Ranchi, my name is Parimal Ghosh. So this guy says that you don't seem to recognize me, and Bepin Babu said that, did we meet before? And this man surprisingly says, God, don't you know that we met for like this one whole week? I took you in my car to Ranchi and then we went here and there, and my name is Parimal Ghosh. Ranchi? And Bepin Babu is all clued. He's like, Ranchi, when, where, what is happening? Now Bepin Babu realized that it was not he, but this man who was making a mistake. Bepin Babu had never been to Ranchi. He had been at the point of going several times but never made it. He smiled and said, do you know who I am? So Bepin Babu just started wondering that, this guy is just making a fool of me, or he's just misunderstanding me, because he's never gone to Ranchi. He's thought about it a lot of times but actually never gone there. So he smiled and said, do you even know who I am? Like, are you mistaking me for somebody else? The man raised his eyebrows, bit his tongue and said, do I know you? Who doesn't know Bepin Choudhury? So this guy Parimal is all like, excuse me, what me? Everybody knows you. Bepin Babu now turned towards the bookshelves and said, still you are making a mistake. One often does. I have never been to Ranchi. Bepin Babu is still on his point and says, I think you're still making a mistake. You must know me, but I have never been there, and you're just mistaking me for somebody else. The man now laughed aloud. He laughed and he said, what are you saying, Mr. Choudhury? You had a fall in Hudru and cut your right knee. I bought you iodine. I had fixed up a car for you to go to Netterhart the next day, but you couldn't because of the pain in the knee. So now this guy started narrating him a lot of incidents that happened there so that he could actually remember what happened there. So he said that, remember, you had a fall and I got you Iodex and you had pain so you couldn't go next day. Can't you recall anything? Someone else was also in Ranchi at that time. Mr. Dinesh Mukherjee. You stayed in a bungalow. You said you didn't like hotel food and would prefer to have your meals cooked by a bawarchi. And then he started telling more incidents like this. He said, don't you recall about this guy called Dinesh Mukherjee? You stayed in a bungalow, you did not like the hotel food, and you said that, I want to eat food cooked by a bawarchi. Bawarchi is basically a chef or a home chef. Mr. Mukherjee stayed with his sister. You had a big argument about the moon landing, remember? I'll tell you more. You always carried a bag with your books on it and your sightseeing tips. Am I right or not? So then this guy, he started narrating more incidents for Bepin to start remembering or actually believing, okay, that you actually came to Ranchi. He started, narrating how he carried a bag. He actually talked about moon landing, and then he asked, don't you remember? Am I right or not? Bepin Babu spoke quietly, his eyes still on the books because he's not sure. He doesn't remember anything. Which month are you talking about? The man said October. No, sir, said Bepin Babu. I spent puja in 58 with a friend in Kanpur. You are making a mistake. Good day. So then Bepin Babu just thought, okay, it's time for me to leave. He said, no, I was with a friend in Kanpur. So you're just making a mistake. Good day, bye, see. But the man didn't go, nor did he stop talking. Very strange. One evening, I had tea with you in a veranda of your bungalow. You spoke about your family. You said you had no children and that you had lost your wife 10 years ago. So now he started telling about his personal life so that Bepin Babu starts believing that he was actually there. Because, you actually talk about your life to someone you've met or to someone you've told. So he says it's very strange because you spoke about that you had no children, you had lost your wife 10 years ago. Your only brother had died insane, which is why you didn't want to visit the mental hospital in Ranchi. And here comes the strongest connection that Parimal could actually give to Bepin. When Bepin Babu had paid for the books and was leaving the shop, the man was still looking at him in utter disbelief. He was still looking like, please, even now, if you don't remember what is this, is there something wrong with you? Because I'm telling you about your life, I'm telling you about the incidents that happened there, everything. Before moving on to the story, key terms: idle chat, unnecessary routine conversation, meek, quiet or humble. Utter disbelief is complete surprise. Now let's discuss few questions. Why did the man stare at Bepin Babu in disbelief? Because, he was not able to believe that he doesn't remember anything. Bepin Babu is not actually recollecting things. Where did Bepin Babu say he went in October 58? He said he went to Kanpur with his friend to celebrate puja. Mention any 3 or more things that Parimal Ghosh knew about Bepin Babu. He knew that he likes books and he takes them on sightseeing. He knew that he had no children. He knew that this man talked about moon landing. This man didn't like hotel food and a lot of stuff. Again to the story. Bepin Babu's car was safely parked in Bertram Street by the Lighthouse Cinema. So this is the area name. He told the driver as he got into the car, just drive by the Ganga, will you, Sitaram? So Sitaram is the driver's name and he says to him, please drive by the Ganga. Driving up the Strand Road, Bepin Babu regretted having paid so much attention to the intruder. So when he was driving back, he actually started thinking, oh please, why did I even listen to him? Now my mind is overthinking about it. I shouldn't have given attention. Regret is basically to feel sad about something that you've done. And intruder is basically some stranger. He had never been to Ranchi. No question about it. It was inconceivable that he should forget such an incident which took place only 6 or 7 years ago. He had an excellent memory unless Bepin Babu's head reeled. So he was all into this belief that no way I have gone to Ranchi. It never actually happened. He has an excellent memory unless he started thinking again that my head has also started being like my brother. Was he losing his mind? But how could be that? He was working daily in his office. It was a big firm and he was doing a responsible job. He wasn't aware of anything ever going seriously wrong. Only today he spoke for half an hour at an important meeting, and yet So now he started overthinking that, am I losing my mind? But I'm working in a very big office. I'm doing a lot of meetings. I'm doing a responsible job. So how can things just go wrong? I just talked in an important meeting and he just started thinking about himself and his mind because of the stranger. And yet the man knew a great deal about him. And then he started thinking, but if he's wrong and he didn't meet me before, how does he know so much about me? He even seemed to know about intimate details. Intimate is very personal details, like his wife isn't there, his brother died, the bag of books, wife's death, brother's insanity. The only mistake was about his having gone to Ranchi. Not a mistake, a deliberate lie. So the only mistake that the man was saying, that he has gone to, that Bipin Babu had been to Ranchi. And he says it's not a mistake, it's a deliberate lie. That means it's a lie intentionally told. In 58, during the pujas, he was in Kanpur at his friend Haridas Bagchi's place. All Bipin Babu had to do was write to, though there was no way of writing to Haridas. Bipin Babu suddenly remembered that Haridas had left with his wife for Japan some weeks ago and he didn't have his address. So to convince himself and to make sure that, what he was thinking was right, he thought, I will write to my friend with whom he was meeting in Kanpur. But then he suddenly remembered that, oh my god, my friend has also left for Japan with his wife. So he didn't have his address for them. But where was the need for the proof? And then he starts saying, why do we need proof? Like, I am convinced I didn't go to Ranchi. I trust myself. He himself was fully aware that he hadn't been to Ranchi. The river breeze was basing, and yet a discomfort lingered in Bepin. So even though he was convinced with himself, there was still one soft corner of his mind that he kept thinking what stranger was saying. Around Hastings, Bepin Babu decided to roll up his trousers and take a look at the right knee. So then he started thinking that, okay, let me see my right knee, because he told me that he had a cut there. There was the mark of an old inch-long cut. It was impossible to tell when the injury had occurred. And Bepin Babu now started thinking, okay, now where did this injury happen? Was this man trying to tell me the truth? Had he never had a fall as a boy and cut his knee? He tried to recall but couldn't. Then Bepin Babu suddenly thought of Dinesh Mukherjee. The man had said that Dinesh was in Ranchi. The best thing surely could be to ask him. He lived quite near in Bendon Street. What about going on right now? So then he started thinking, okay, so now the cut, okay, kind of the cut must have been from childhood. But another thing to know that whether the person was saying right or not was to ask Dinesh Mukherjee. And Dinesh Mukherjee stays very near to him. So he thought, let me go there and ask him right now. But then, if he had really never been to Ranchi, what would Dinesh think if Bipin Babu had asked for a confirmation? He would probably conclude Bipin Babu was going nuts. No, it would be ridiculous to ask him. And he knew how ruthless Dinesh's sarcasm could be. So how we all start taking society's pressure and start thinking what this man must think of me if I ask this, if I that. And Bipin Babu also start thinking the same way, that if I ask him, he will think I'm going nuts, and his sarcastic comments would actually be another pressure. So let me just leave that also. Sipping a cold drink in his air-conditioned living room, Bipin Babu felt at ease again. Such a nuisance. Just because they have nothing else to do, they go about getting into other people's hair. After dinner, snuggling in bed with one of the new thrillers, Bepin Babu forgot all about the man in Newmarket. So then he came home, went to his bed, started reading books, took a cold drink, and started feeling relaxed, and started thinking, these people and these strangers, they just want to interfere in others' life. Let me just forget about it. And he started reading a thriller and slept. Next day in the office, Bipin Babu noticed that with every passing hour, the previous day's encounter was occupying more and more of his mind. There's something called that once something is in your head and it's not sorted, how much ever you tend to forget it, you cannot. The same was happening with Bepin Babu. Even though he thought that with this cold drink and reading a thriller book would help him, it wasn't. Next day, he started thinking more and more about it. If the man knew so much about Bepin Babu, how could he make a mistake about the Ranchi trip? So, it's like, if he knew so much about me, how can he tell me wrong that I went to Ranchi? Just before lunch, Bipin Babu decided to ring up Dinesh Mukherjee, and then he finally decided, let me just call him. It was better to settle the question over the phone. At least the embarrassment on his face wouldn't show. 235616, Bipin Babu dialed the number. Hello, is that Dinesh? That's Bipin here. Well, what's the news? I just wanted to find out if you recalled an incident which took place in 1950. So now Bipin Babu started asking him that, "Hi Dinesh, do you recall this incident?" 58 what incident? Were you in Calcutta right through that year? That's the first thing I've got. Wait just a minute. 58, just let me check in my diary. For a minute there was silence. Bepin Babu could feel that his heartbeat had gone up. He was sweating because he's like, if Ranchi is true, then there's something wrong with me and I cannot bear it. Hello? Yes, I've got it. I've been out twice. Where? Once in February, nearby to Krishnanagar to a nephew's wedding. But then you would know about this one, the trip to Ranchi. You were there too, that's all. But what's all the sleuthing about? No, I just want to, and then Bepin Babu just cuts the call because he's shocked. He cannot believe what's happening. Bepin Babu slammed the receiver down and gripped his head with hand. He felt his head swimming. He was all into what is happening. What is there? A chill seemed to spread over his body. There were sandwiches, but he couldn't eat. He had lost his appetite. So all of this explains his emotions on how when you get to know something that you actually don't remember. And you sound like, what is happening? So the key terms, head reeled, he was shocked and confused. Losing his mind, becoming mad. Intimate, very personal, going nuts, going mad. Getting into people's hair, interfering with and annoying people. Sleuthing is investigating. Now let's discuss few questions. Why did Bipin Babu worry about Parimal Ghosh itself? Because he didn't remember anything about Ranchi, and when he was saying, he knew every detail, but he was shocked. How did he try to decide who was right? His memory of Parimal? He thought he will call Dinesh Mukherjee. Why did Bipin Babu hesitate to visit? Because, he thought that if the incident is wrong, then he would actually throw sarcastic comments. What did Mr. Mukherjee say? Did it comfort Bipin Babu or add to his worries? It added to his worries because he was shocked. He started thinking that his mind has gone mental. He didn't know what to say. Moving on to the story. After lunchtime, Bipin Babu realized that he couldn't possibly carry on sitting at his desk and working. This had never happened in the 25 years he had been with the firm. He had a reputation for being a tireless, conscientious worker, but today his head was in a whirl. So, when a businessman like this, he gets to know that there's something wrong with his head and his memory, he couldn't concentrate on anything. He started moving here and there. He was just very fidgety. Back home at 2:30, Bipin Babu lay down in bed and tried to gather his wits together. He knew that it was possible to lose one's memory through an injury in head, but he didn't know of a single instance of someone remembering everything except one particular incident, and a fairly recent and significant one. He had always wanted to go to Ranchi. To have gone there, done things, and not to remember was something utterly impossible. At 7:30, Bepin Babu's servant came and announced, "Chinnu Babu, sir, says it's very important." Bepin Babu knew what Chinni had come for. Chinni Lal had been at school. So now there's another person who has entered Bepin Babu's house. He had been having a rough time lately and had been coming to see him about job. Bepin Babu knew it was not possible to do anything for him and in fact told him so. But Chinni kept turning him like so. He kept asking, "Please help me, help me, help me." Bepin Babu said that not only was it not possible, but not in several weeks. But as soon as the servant stepped, it struck that Bipin Babu, that Chinni might remember something about the 58. There was no harm in us because it was a childhood friend, so you share things. Bipin Babu hurried down, and as Chinni was about to leave, but seeing Babu appear, he turned around. Bipin Babu didn't beat about the bush. "Listen, Chinni, I want to ask you something. You have a good memory, and you've been seeing me off and on. Just throw your mind back and tell me, did I go to Ranchi?" Chinni said, 58, it must have been 58, or was it 59? "You sure that I did go to Ranchi?" Chinni's look of amazement was not unmixed with worry. Do you mean you have doubts about having gone at all? Did I go? Do you remember clearly? Bepin Babu was like trying to ask and just reconfirm again and again and again. Chinny sat down on the sofa, fixed Bepin Babu with a long, hard stare and said, Bepin, have you taken to drugs or something? As far as I know, you had a clean record where such things were concerned. I know that old friendships don't mean much to you, but at least you have a good memory. You can't really mean that you've forgotten about the Ranchi trip. Bepin Babu had to turn away from Chunni's incredulous stare. Do you remember what my last job was? Asked Chunilal. Of course, you worked in a travel agency. And Bepin was like, yeah, this though I remember it. Karke. You remember that you don't remember that I was who fixed up your railway booking for Ranchi. I went to the station to see you off. One of the fans in your apartment was not working. I got an electrician. Have you forgotten everything? Whatever is the matter with you? You don't look so well, you know. And then Chunilal gave him more incidents to believe that Ranchi actually happened. Bepin Babu sighed and shook his head. I've been working too hard. That must be the reason. Must see about consulting a special. Doubtless, it was Bepin's condition which made Chunilal leave without mentioning anything about his job. Paresh Chanda was a young physician with a pair of bright eyes and a sharp nose. He became thoughtful when he heard about Bepin Babu's symptoms. Look, Dr. Chanda, you must cure me of this horrible illness. I can't tell you how it's affecting my work. Dr. Chanda shook his head. You know what, Mr. Choudhury, he said. I've never had to deal with a case such as yours. Frankly, this is quite outside my field of experience. But I have one suggestion. I don't know if it'll work, but it's worth a try. It can do no harm. So, he's having this conversation with the doctor. Bepin Babu leaned forward anxiously. As far as I can make out, and I think he has the same opinion, he must have been to Ranchi. But due to some unknown reason, the entire episode has slipped out of your mind. What I suggest is that you go to Ranchi once again. The sight of the place may remind you of your trip. This is not impossible. More that I cannot do at the moment. I'm prescribing a nerve tonic and a tranquilizer. Sleep is essential or the symptoms will get more pronounced. So the doctor says that, you must go back to Ranchi, try to remember and recall after seeing the place. And more than that, I cannot help you. I can give you a nerve tonic and sleep is essential. If not, it will keep increasing. Bepin Babu felt somewhere better the next morning. After breakfast, he rang up his office, gave some instructions, and then procured a first-class ticket for Ranchi for the same evening. Now the key terms: carry on, continue, conscientious, careful and correct. Head was at a wall, confused and unable to think. Gather his wits together, make an effort to become calm and think clearly. Having a rough time, having a lot of problems, turning up like a bed penny, appearing at a place where one is not welcome. Didn't beat up, came straight to the point, off and on, now and then. Throw your mind back, think back and recall. Tranquilizer, medicine to reduce stress and anxiety. Procured, got with a little difficulty. Now let's discuss. Who was Chunilal? He was his friend. What did he want from Bepin Babu? A job. Why was Dr. Chanda puzzled? What was unusual about that? He just lost one incident once. So now moving to the story again. Getting off the train at Ranchi next morning, he realized at once that he had never been there before. He came out of the station, took a taxi and drove around the town for a while. He realized that the streets, the buildings, the hotels, the bazaars, the Morbadi hills, with none of these had he the slightest acquaintance. So he took the train ticket, he went to Ranchi, but when he got down there, nothing was familiar. He didn't remember anything. The psychiatrist's tip didn't work. Would a trip to the Hudru Falls help? So he started thinking that maybe that would help. He didn't believe so, but at the same time, he didn't wish to leave with the feeling that he didn't try enough. So he arranged for a car and left for Hudru in the afternoon. So he thought, let me now go to Hudru Falls and sleep. Even though, he wasn't sure that would help, but still. At 5 o'clock the same afternoon in Hudru, two Gujarati gentlemen from a group of picnickers discovered Bepin Babu lying unconscious beside a boulder. When he came around, the first thing Bepin Babu said was, "I am finished. There's no hope left." So he was so panicked, he couldn't remember anything, that he fainted. And when these people saw him, he said, "I'm finished. There's no hope left." Next morning, Bipin Babu was in Calcutta. He realized that there was truly no hope for him. Soon he would lose everything: his will to work, his confidence, his ability, his balance of mind. Was he going to end up in the asylum act? Bipin Babu couldn't think. So he now started thinking that, my life is over. I will start forgetting everything and my life will get into end. My work, my balance of mind, everything. Back home, he rang up Dr. Chanda and asked him to come over. Then after a shower, he got into bed with an ice bag. Just then the servant brought him a letter which someone had left, a greenish envelope with his name red ink on it. Above the name it said, "Urgent and confidential." In spite of his condition, Bipin Babu had a feeling that he ought to go through the letter. He tore open the envelope, took out the letter, and this is what it read. "Dear Bipin, I had no idea that affluence would bring about the kind of change in you that it has done. Was it so difficult for you to help out an old friend down on his luck? I have no money, so my resources are limited. What I have is imagination, a part of which I used in retribution of your unfeeling behavior. Well, you'll be all right again now. A novel I have been written is being considered by a publisher. If he likes it enough, it'll see me through the next few months. Yours, Chunilal." When Dr. Chanda came, so you saw how the letter was so smartly written by Chunilal, which basically said that this was just a part of my game. This was just that you couldn't help me and everything. When Dr. Chanda came, Bipin Babu said, "I'm fine. It all came back as soon as I got off the train." "A unique case," said Dr. Chanda. "I shall certainly write about it in a medical journal." And he is also one more big doctor who doesn't know what is happening. "The reason why I sent for you," said Bipin Babu, "is that I have a pain in the hip from a fall I had in Ranchi. If you could prescribe a painkiller." Come around, regained consciousness, retribution, punishment or revenge, affluence, having a lot of money. Now let's discuss. Had Bipin Babu really lost his memory and forgotten all about a trip? No, he hadn't. Why do you think Chunilal did what he did? Because his friend couldn't help him with a job. Says he has no money. Why is it that what is it that he does have? It's his imagination. Now questions. The author describes Bipin Babu as a serious and hardworking man. What evidence can you find in the story that he did not mix with people? He had meetings, he used to read, he used to just stay with himself. Why did Bipin Babu change his mind about meeting? What was the result? So he changed his mind because he thought Chunilal will remember something, and the result was that he actually told him about Ranchi. Bipin Babu lost consciousness because he was shocked. He couldn't remember anything. He thought that now his memory is lost and everything. How do you think Bipin Babu reacted when he found out that Chunilal had tricked him? He was actually relieved because now he knew that his memory is not going. He was even sad that he couldn't actually help his friend. But he was not angry because he knew that he was just relieved at that point of time. Now let's do a quick revision. Bepin Choudhury is at Kali Charan's Likey's every Monday to buy books when a man named Parimal Ghosh asks him if he recognizes him and Bipin says no. Parimal seems to know several details about Bipin's life and claims they met in Ranchi. Bipin is left baffled as he clearly remembers that he had spent the October of 1958 with his friend in Kanpur. He dismissed Parimal's story as a mistake, but he cannot stop thinking. Bipin keeps looking for proof that he did not go to Ranchi, and he asks some of his friends about it, who all claim he went to Ranchi. Bipin has always trusted his sharp memory, so he finds this hard to believe. Bipin seeks the help of a physician who tells him to go to Ranchi again. On arriving, he doesn't recognize and visits Hudru Falls. There he loses consciousness and wakes up feeling hopeless. Back in Calcutta, Bipin worries about his mental state when he receives a letter. We find out that it is all a plan by Chunilal for revenge. Bipin then tells his doctor he has remembered and asks for a painkiller. So this was the story, Bipin's Lapse of Memory.